Hello, my dear Franken friends, and welcome to Spookyou, your one-stop shop for all things ghastly and ghoulish. I'm your host, Barnabas Vixen. How horrible of you to join us. Curl up, invite your friends, and by all means, make sure those lights are out. That way it's harder to tell what may or may not be lurking around you. There's nothing like a good mystery, am I right? Tonight will feature a singular tale of devilish design curated by those wicked weavers of woe. And without further ado, allow me to pass the reins on over to our vivacious voiceover virtuoso Trey Falco for tonight's sinister story. Please keep all limbs and side covers at all times. We wouldn't want anything to go missing now, would we?
So one of the guards told me that he worked in a residential building. Now, the building itself was normal, but in the basement of the building was a big round hole. No one knew how it got there, and the residents said they just woke up to find it there one day. The old lady who discovered it almost fell inside when she went to retrieve her bicycle. Various survey and research teams were sent to investigate the hole, but oddly enough, no equipment could determine where the bottom was. Electronics would stop working at a certain depth, throwing something inside produced no sound of impact, chemical lights got swallowed up by the darkness, etc. They sent one crew member down there, but after about 10 minutes of descending, he stopped responding. They pulled him out as fast as they could, but he was gone. All that was left of him was the pile of clothes he was wearing, still attached to the safety gear and ropes. The company was appointed to stand guard in front of the basement and not let anyone in. The guard who worked there, Andy, told me the job was pretty leisure most nights, except that he was bored. And then one night, he heard something coming from inside the basement. It sounded like someone calling his name. At first he thought it was his imagination, but the more he listened, the more he became convinced that it was his sister. Despite getting instructions from HQ not to go near the hole, mostly due to the possibility of slipping and falling, Andy opened the door. And sure enough, there it was, his sister's voice calling him right from the hole, clear as day. He asked her how she got there and if she was okay, and she perkily said that everything was fine. She asked Andy to come down there so they could talk, and she talked in such a nonchalant way that Andy became suspicious of the whole situation. She asked him again to come down, and Andy refused, telling her that he would call help, to which his sister became increasingly agitated and angry. She demanded that he come down there and help her. Andy didn't budge, and his sister said that he would let her die there, just like he let their father die. Andy froze to this, and his sister uttered a single sentence, which made Andy run out of there.
Sorry for the interruption, dear listener, but I just had to remind you. If you're enjoying this series, then make sure you head on over to Amazon and pre-order the book from this talented author, Tales of a Security Guard, set to release on January 30th. Seriously, take the time to pause this video and go give it a look-see. Without these authors, our vivacious voiceover virtuoso would be picking pennies out of the couch to feed his family instead of narrating these amazing stories. At least now he has a hobby. I mean, would you take that away from him? I didn't think so. Not only does it include the 12-part series that you're watching right now, but it also includes the Night Guard series that we've previously narrated on this channel, and more terrifying tales to fuel your insomnia-induced night readings. And while you're at it, make sure you head on over to their Facebook page, Scary Stories with BB, to keep up to date with everything that they're doing. And I'd also like to mention that this author is not our sponsor, nor have we been paid in any way to bring you this message. No. We here at Spookyou just want to remind you, our listeners, that the authors behind these wonderful stories need to eat too. And not only that, but they do deserve to be compensated for the work that they do. That about wraps it up for this break, so back to your story.
Andy, life is nothing but a pile of shit. Those were his father's last words before he killed himself in front of Andy. Andy bolted out of the building, listening to his sister calling after him and begging him to come down. Andy called HQ, telling them that he was never going back, and he was assigned to a different post and never had a problem again. The really weird thing about this whole experience, though, was that no one but Andy knew what his father's last words were. He had never told anyone that he had watched him turn the gun on himself and just stuck to the story that he found him dead. But the weirdest of all things was the fact that his sister had died in a tragic car accident 4 years before he ever saw that hole. The basement was locked tightly afterwards and guards continued working there, but they all reported the same thing. Voices of their loved ones calling from the hole and always asking the one same thing: to come down. The intervention guy whose story I shared in one of the earlier updates told me another one recently, which chilled me to the bone. He and his unit were stationed at a long-since abandoned hotel. They'd get to do whatever they wanted in the hotel, but at exactly 4:25 a.m., they had to assemble at the reception desk. Their job was to sweep the entire area for any suspicious activity. The guy who told me this said HQ never told them who or what they were looking for, but they were ordered to shoot on sight upon seeing anyone besides the unit members in the hotel. They had been sweeping the hotel 4 nights in a row at exactly 4:30 a.m. until 5 a.m., but never found traces of anyone. And then on the 5th night, as they checked the 2nd floor, the commander of the unit ordered them to stop and be quiet. There was a sound of muffled giggling coming from somewhere on the floor, and strangely though, as they listened, the giggling was always the same intonation and length of pause. Giggle, 5-second pause. Giggle, 5-second pause. He described it as an adult trying to impersonate a child's giggle. Carefully, the unit followed the sound to one of the rooms, and as they stood in front of the door, the giggling became louder and more frequent. The unit burst inside the room and pointed their guns at the source of the sound. Facing the window was a tall person, except it wasn't a person. Here's how the guy told me he described the creature. A very round face which contrasted its impossibly thin body. It had extremely long arms and legs, and it was so inhumanely tall that it had to hunch over and bend its knees in order to avoid touching the ceiling. It giggled again, and it still sounded muffled, just as it did behind a closed door. The unit stood there with their guns pointed at this thing as the creature giggled once more before going silent. And then it slowly started to turn around and locked eyes with the unit. The creature apparently had a grinning, toothy, round face with large, unblinking eyes, and this took the unit aback so much that they froze. It giggled again, but this time it was deeper and more guttural, albeit still muffled. And just then, the creature started running towards the unit, all the while giggling louder and faster than ever. Everyone fired at will, practically emptying their clips into the thing. Luckily, the giggler, as he was later dubbed by the intervention unit, never managed to reach them and fell backwards as soon as the force of the bullets connected with it. As it lay there on the ground, it apparently kept giggling some more, but the sound became slower and more quiet until it completely stopped, leaving the creature dead with its grinning face never changing. The commander informed HQ about this, who told him that their mission was complete and they no longer needed to stay in the hotel. The intervention guy concluded that 2 of the unit members committed suicide within 2 months after the mission. In their farewell notes, they said they could no longer stand to listen to the giggling at night.
Welcome back, my darling deviants. Well, tell me, did you enjoy that twisted tale? Of course you did. I knew you had that air about you, that hunger for the horrific and the macabre. So, did we spook you? If not, then file a complaint with our complaint department detailing all accounts of non-spookiness you found in this video, and we'll get back to you in 2 to 3 millennia. Give or take a business eon or 2. However, if you've enjoyed what you've just heard this evening, then make sure you leave a like on this video and annihilate that subscribe button. Such a small act of obedience is exactly what we need to put the food on the table around here. There's only so many days we can have refried kidney and toe jam hash before I'm absolutely sick of it. Spoiler alert, that ship sailed long ago. Now, I must bid you adieu. I've many things to take care of, and this outro is eating into my day off. Run along now. Have no fear, we'll be here every Tuesday and Thursday to bring you another terrible tale. Go forth, my ghastly gang. and stay spooky.